Wow, this is world changing, at least in the business world and the private world and all of our worlds. I don't know if you heard me talking about this before, but wow, this ML is changing everything. There is a piece of software out there called ChatGPT. It's from a company called OpenAI. OpenAI has had investments from all of the big players out there, including Elon Musk, who got that whole thing rolling. Now, I've been playing with ChatGPT for a couple of years now, but just near the end of 2022, they came out with a whole new version. And this new version, called ChatGPT 3, well, how is that for a really clever name, right? Is amazing. Absolutely amazing. So I'm involved in what they call their preview. Kind of think of that as an early beta program. And you can go in, if you're part of this, and ask it questions. Now, let's look at Google and what Google has been doing for a very long time. Their goal in life, their reason to be, was to make all of the world's information available. I'm sure you've heard that before. If you go to Google and you type in a question, or you type in, a number of keywords, which is how I tend to do it, you will get answers. But the answers are in the form of what? Links, right? So there's a whole bunch of links to articles. There's a little bit of context with each link to help you try and determine if this is something that you want to look at a little more, deeply, if you will. And what else is on that results page? Google makes its money by selling information about you, right? So on that search page, they have sold your information to advertisers who are going to place ads there. So think about that results page. There's ads maybe at the top, there's ads down the side, and nowadays there's even ads kind of intertwined. But everything's changing. I mean, changing. 2023, what a year. And a lot of it is because of ChatGPT. I have said for a very long time that I don't think true artificial intelligence is going to be around for a very long time, maybe never. So I'm kind of going to pull a bunch of different things together here. So bear with me now, because this is going to change everyone's lives, whether they realize it has changed their life or not. But they'll know. Believe me, they'll know. You'll all know. Everybody will know. I've already figured this out, okay? But when you are looking at trying to determine if a computer has some form of artificial intelligence, there's something that's been around for a very long time called the Turing test. Now, the Turing test was developed by Alan Turing back in 1950. And the idea behind the Turing test was that if you were on a computer, and let's say you were chatting, texting, we'll use modern terminology, texting with someone else, can you determine by the questions you ask and the answers you get whether or not you're talking to a human? Maybe you're talking to a computer. And for a very long time, it was pretty darn obvious if you were talking to a computer, wasn't it? Because the computers just weren't very good. Look at the Google results. They're pretty good in some ways. They're terrible in other ways. They're hand-tuned in some ways and not in other ways. You remember Ask Jeeves, if you've ever used that before, where that was human curated. And of course, there have been many others out there. Yahoo had this big kind of like a yellow pages of all the different topics. And people could list their websites in there, their products in there, put it all together. Well, you can look at some of these things and quite obviously pick out, well, this is computer generated. This is pretty poor. And part of the problem with stuff that's computer generated nowadays is the computer generated stuff is wrong and yet it sounds like it knows what it's talking about. Now, if you're a human being and you've interacted with people, you know there are people out there that have no clue what they are talking about, and yet they speak with just absolute authority, right? You have to trust them because they sound like they know what they're talking about. They're very, positive. Of course, I'm not going to draw a comparison here to Hitler of the Great Lie and just repeat it often enough, but why not? Because, in fact, he was able to get some amazing lies through people's heads. Why? Because he told the same thing multiple times, and they were able to get people to believe it, right? The big lie. Now, I'm not saying the computers are doing the big lie, but when you get what looks like a very authoritative answer from one of these computer systems, you might believe it. Now, there's a website out there that I've used, you might have heard of before. Heck, you might have used it before, that is designed for programmers and other technical people. It's called Stack Overflow. In fact, if you used Google or DuckDuckGo, you probably stumbled on Stack Overflow. And Stack Overflow now has a policy banning the use of AI, artificial intelligence. They're saying this is a temporary policy intended to slow down the influx of answers and other content created with ChatGPT. What the final policy will be regarding the use of this and other similar tools is something that we'll need to discuss with Stack Overflow staff and quite likely here on Meta Stack Overflow. Overall, because the average rate of getting correct answers from ChatGPT is too low, the posting of answers created by ChatGPT is substantially harmful to the site and to users who are asking and looking for correct answers. The primary problem is that while the answers which ChatGPT produces have a high rate of being incorrect, they typically look like they might be good, and the answers are very easy to produce. There are also many people trying out ChatGPT to create answers without the expertise or willingness to verify that the answer is correct prior to posting. Because such answers are so easy to produce, a large number of people are posting a lot of answers. The volume of these answers in the thousands, and the fact that the answers often require a detailed read by someone with at least some subject matter expertise in order to determine that the answer is actually bad, has effectively swamped our volunteer-based quality curation infrastructure. So what I'm talking about right now is ChatGPT, and in fact, there's another one that Google has that really hasn't gotten a whole lot of press, and there are other people who are basing it on this OpenAI technology, and they're saying this is artificial intelligence. And let me tell you, it is amazing. As I mentioned, I have been following it, and I have one of these preview accounts that I've been using and playing with. They became available in November. I think right now it's closed. You can't sign up, but who knows? They may open it up again. And you can go in there and ask a question. It is designed as a chat engine, so it has context with the things you've been asking. So if you're asking it a bunch of questions about your health or whatever, it's going to know that. And so it's going to give you responses but that are based on that. But you can ask it anything. You can ask it who was the emperor of Rome in 5 BC. You can ask it anything you want to. And it even comes up with checklists, bullet points. It goes on and on. It is absolutely amazing what it's able to do. And this technology that OpenAI has come up with is something that can be used many ways in many types of things. And you're going to see it. It's going to be there very, very quickly. Now, there's a lot more to talk about here and how it is going to affect all of us. But I want to point you to a website, and I think I have it open. Looks like I might have closed that. but it's called you.com. This is a website that's using what they call AI, artificial intelligence, and we can talk about that as well, right? If it passes the Turing test, if you can't tell a computer from a person, is it intelligent? Well, I would say that it's not. I'd say it's machine learning, basically, but the intelligence starts coming in when it's sentient. And you might remember a Google researcher last year said that they had an artificial intelligence that had gained sentience. Yeah, it happened that fast. Something I didn't expect for decades. Looks like it's starting to happen now. And it's going to destroy a number of companies out there. It's going to destroy whole industries. And it's already started, and that's kind of scary. But have a look. Go online right now to you.com, and you can play around with a AI-based search engine. It is really quite cool. We're going to talk more about this ChatGPT, how it's going to affect everyone, where it's going, what does it mean to you and your job or your business. It could mean a problem. It could be good. I can tell you, Google has put out a red notice because of this. We've explained a little bit about AI, the Turing test, and talked a little bit about ChatGPT. There are some great and scary things going on, kind of all at the same time. We're going to talk about how it will affect your life this year. It is crazy. It's absolutely amazing. ChatGPT is what they call an AI. I would call it a machine learning system. And the idea behind it is they have fed it a lot of information. Now, it doesn't have currently active internet activity and connections. Right now, it only has data up through 2021. And I'm sure that'll change over time. It is based on technology that Google had developed and released here a few years back. It's just some freaking amazing stuff that they have done here. But you really can ask it any questions you want. So I'm on that you.com website right now. Anybody can use this. I'm in the GPT-3 preview. But that's not what we're going to use right now. I'm going to use something that anybody can use. So I'm going to say, tell me about Craig Peterson on iHeart. Okay. So you hit return and ta-da, up it comes. So it's giving me here 9 million results, 30 results less, right? But here we go. It's one of my podcasts over on one of the radio stations out there. So you can see me there. I'm going to say, tell me about Craig Peterson's radio show. Okay. And it is showing me here, well, actually, CraigPeterson.com radio show. So you can click on it. It'll take you there. It's showing podcasts over on Apple. It's showing my YouTube channel. That's kind of cool. Just all kinds of stuff. America's leading technology news commentator here over on Audible. I'm kind of all over the place. But it is absolutely amazing because it's answering my question. Now, it's still giving me links, issue.com. When I'm using something like ChatGPT directly or one of the other pieces of software that's using OpenAI, it comes up and gives me some very interesting results because it actually formulates an answer. It's frankly quite amazing. So there are some questions that you can ask, answers that it'll give. But I want you to go back to what we were talking about earlier, and that is our friends at Google. If you type in a Google search query, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a bunch of links, and it's going to have a little bit of context from that web page. But there's also Google's moneymakers on there. Now, obviously, they're making money just by showing you results, but the real money is in the advertisers. And those advertising results, right there on the page, those are where they really make the money. So I want you to think about this a little bit. If there is an AI out there, now U.com, I think it gives pretty good results, but it's not an AI. It's not formulating an answer for me. It's just giving me pages to look at. But what would happen if Google was only to give an answer for you? You know, kind of like those little boxes. There's little pull-up tabs that you can bring up on the results screen. It's probably using some of this AI to do that. But what would happen if you said, "Hey, how do I turn off my microphone on my computer?" Something pretty simple. If it just told you how to turn off the microphone in your computer, or if it went the next step and said, "Hey, would you like me to turn it off for you?" What would you do? How could Google make money if something like that was in place? Well, that's why this company is worth so much. Right now, Microsoft is discussing making a $10 billion investment into OpenAI. That's a report from Semaphore. This deal that would eventually give Microsoft a 49% stake in OpenAI also includes a clause that Microsoft would receive 3/4 of OpenAI's profits until it recovers its investment. Isn't that something? With additional investors taking 49%, so almost the whole company, and OpenAI retaining the remaining 2% in equity. Now, that is based on a roughly $29 billion valuation of OpenAI, a company that's less than a handful of years old. Isn't that something? That's how they look at this. Microsoft wants to use it for all kinds of things, because one of the things that this ChatGPT and OpenAI can do is it can write blog posts, not just answer questions. It can write letters. It can write interview questions and interview answers for hiring. It can write advertising copy. It can write computer software. Isn't that just amazing? Microsoft had invested $1 billion in OpenAI back in 2019. They became OpenAI's exclusive cloud provider because that's where OpenAI is running all of their stuff. And they plan to integrate this ChatGPT into the Bing search engine. So they're planning on sending Google executives running for the door. Imagine what an advantage Microsoft would have over Bing Bing could have over Google if you could just ask it a question and it would give you an answer. Now, today, you have to be careful about the answers because there are some things in there that are harmful. In fact, in the preview, when you are using the chat bot, if you will, if it gives an answer, when it gives an answer, it has a thumbs up and a thumbs down. If you hit the thumb down, it then gives you the option of saying why. A simple one is the answer is incorrect. Another one is this is harmful. The answer's harmful, right? It's like gargle with bleach in order to get rid of the that nasty stuff that grows on your tongue sometimes, right? In other words, they know that it is not ready for prime time yet. And I think it'll be a while still before it's really ready for prime time. So what some companies have already started doing that are using this technology on their back end is they're saying it's a cure for writer's block. So if you are writing and you know how it is, sometimes you just can't think of how to start something. Well, you go into one of these websites and you say, okay, let's do it. And you tell it the question, it answers the question, and now you've got something to write from because you're going to have to fix it, right? The grammar's poor, the spelling is even poor, punctuation is bad, and some of the information is bad. So this isn't going to change everything today, But over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, almost everything's going to change. It's just absolutely amazing to look at this stuff, right? So it's going to disrupt our friends at Google. We know that, right? And it's going to also be used for a few things. It's being used right now. There is a hacking group out there, and the hacking group has been using it to write new hacking software. So that's going to happen. Right? There are a lot of things that it's going to be used for. It's going to be used in cars. It's going to be used in, if Microsoft buys this like they're talking about, it's going to be used in Word. So you're sitting there in Word, you're trying to write something, it will come up with suggestions for you. It's amazing. And this type of technology, think about IBM's Watson that played on Jeopardy and beat Jennings over there. Think about that sort of thing. This core technology used for medical and medical diagnoses, at least helping to steer doctors in the right direction. It's just absolutely amazing what's happening out there. So check it out. Do a little research yourself. Find out more about ChatGPT because it is going to be changing things, including in the cybersecurity business that I'm in, right? Yeah, the only constant is change. We got a few topics to discuss revolving around cars right now. The cars have these dashboards, some studies out again showing how dangerous they are, and some manufacturers are selling subscriptions for some of this. We've heard some of these studies before. There's a new one out right now, because many automakers have been getting rid of that good old-fashioned buttons and knobs that we have on our cars, right, that we drive around, our wonderful SUVs. You know, it's so easy to turn up the radio or turn it down. It's easy to glance down at the dashboard and see your speed and the fuel levels, etc., etc. But now they are switching everything over to infotainment systems. Now, not everybody, but many of them. Basically, they're strapping a tablet to your dashboard and saying, here is the center of all knowledge, right? And it's gotten so bad that in some lower-end cars that are out there, and particularly electric cars, they don't even have that dash right in front of you. You know, if you look at that dashboard, what is it showing you in a normal car? It's got, as I said, the speedometers right there, the odometer, maybe the outside temperature, maybe your fuel economy, or how long it is going to last, right? Your fuel's going to last. It might have a few other things on there. Obviously, your signal lights are going to flash and various things. Some of the lower-end cars out there, including a couple of models of Tesla, do not have that. They've moved everything over from that wonderful little dashboard right in front of you to that tablet in the center of the dashboard there. So if you want to see how fast you're going, you've got to look over to the side to look at that tablet that's in the center of the dashboard. If you want to see what the temperature is outside, hopefully you can just look over there. But again, you've got to look over there. We're talking about moving your head a whole lot in order to do that. And heaven forbid you want to play around with, let's listen to this, let's play with the temperature, the seat temperature, the air conditioning, etc. And you have to go through multiple menus. Now, you might remember BMW had their iDrive system that was designed to make it so that you could just have that little knob, you know, so you turn the knob, it's right there by the shifter, and you can flip the knob up and down in order to select things, and you're looking on your dashboard. Nowadays, that's not the case. You got to look at that silly tablet. So new evidence is now showing that those touchscreens are far less safe and efficient as my 1980 Mercedes-Benz diesel. Okay? And this is according to the findings of a Swedish car magazine. So over the summer, the magazine conducted tests across 12 models of car, according to Futurism.com, 11 modern, along with one 2005 Volvo with physical controls, and allowed test drivers to get to know the ins and outs of the vehicles. The tests themselves were simple. Drivers were instructed to cruise down an empty airstrip at 68 miles per hour and were timed on the completion of 4 infotainment tasks, ranging from adjusting the AC to messing with the radio. The Swedish magazine found that the 2005 Volvo far outperformed the modern infotainment screen-equipped cars, with the driver completing all 4 tasks in just 10 seconds and 1,000 feet traveled. Meanwhile, the best time in the modern cars was nearly 14 seconds. But even these speeds were relative outliers because for the majority of infotainment-equipped vehicles, it took well over 20 seconds and at least 2,000 feet. So think about that, how far that is. 2,000 feet, you're messing with a tablet that's to your right, if you're driving in the U.S., and you're not looking at the road. How's that for dangerous? People have been complaining for years about people picking up and holding cell phones. Well, that's far less dangerous than it is to be looking over to the right while your vehicle travels 2,000 feet. That's just absolutely incredible. But they're not efficient to use, right? They control functions like the windshield wipers or climate control. It starts to get ridiculous. So some of the manufacturers are starting to think about maybe we should go back to the old analog controls. You know, they're permanently positioned. You know where they are. You learn where they are. You don't even have to look much of the time. You can just feel. You reach over and you grab the volume control. Right? And some of those things are right there on your steering wheel, of course. You know, volume, change the channel, some of those things, right? But you don't have to take your eyes off the road for maybe more than a quarter second. But a slippery touchscreen that does not have any sort of tactile feedback does not. So there's so many problems with this. And I can see why the car makers are doing this. It saves them a lot of money. They don't have to have these buttons and knobs. They don't have to place them anywhere, right? Because they don't even exist. So they don't have to mount them. Their costs get lower. It kind of goes on and on. But it doesn't make sense for you and me. And I'm looking forward to cars that are not that complicated anymore. And as I mentioned, some of the vendors you'll find aren't doing that anymore, which is really, really good. Now, this is something that we talked about before, kind of in a similar direction. If you buy a car nowadays, you almost have to buy it with built-in GPS. So the car comes, it's got the maps, and it drives you down the road. Some of them are really nice, like in one of our cars, it will, if it's announcing a turn or something, it'll only announce it through the front left, or in other words, the driver's side speaker, so it's not bothering everybody else, and it's letting you what to do. So some of those integration things are kind of nice. They might even vibrate your seat or your steering wheel to let you know that you need to turn. But there's a huge problem here just over the last few years, and it's occurred a couple of times now, and that is you have to have a digital network for it to get updates. You know, back in the day, I had a GPS that picked up the traffic conditions over FM band subcarriers. So you didn't have to have any data. But then they started adding 2G data to the cars. And then 3G data to the cars. And your remote control for your car, for instance, may well be running over a digital network. And not a network that you have to pair it with. You don't have to tell it what your Wi-Fi password is. It is tying in directly itself. AT&T was one of the big carriers for this sort of data. So your car would then get a message to auto start, right? Push the button, ta-da, up it starts. And you could do it from almost anywhere. You didn't have to be close to the car because it was going over the digital cellular phone network. Pretty cool, isn't it? But then 2G was shut down. And then 3G was shut down. So all of those wonderful features that were running over the cellular digital network all of a sudden disappeared on you, didn't they? And some of these vendors wanted thousands of dollars to upgrade it. Thousands of dollars to upgrade your GPS. That's why I don't rely on a GPS in the car. I'd rather use Apple CarPlay and use my phone, which gets updates all of the time, right? And has its own digital network built into it. Well, BMW now has started selling heated seat subscriptions for $18 a month. Yeah, the whole auto industry is absolutely racing towards all of these microtransactions. You pay by the month for heated seats. You pay by the month for a remote start on the car and many other things. So, the cost of the car isn't necessarily what you're paying the dealer. It's what all of these subscription charges are going to be. A couple of things in the news about Tesla I thought I would bring up. There's that accident that occurred in November 22 with footage out there now. And Tom's Guide here, he put 1,000 miles on a Tesla. We're going to talk about what he thought about it. Well, Elon Musk has been a very busy man. You know all of the different companies that he's started. We won't go into those right now. And they've had varying levels of success. Of course, one of the biggest ones is Tesla. And they have been driving not just the electric car business with their various models of cars, that in fact, when they came out and were being tested by the consumer products people, it broke the test. It was so good. That's how safe it was. It was really something to see. He had put a lot of work into it. And now we're seeing Teslas on the road everywhere. I was driving the other day and I counted no less than a half a dozen in just about an hour of driving. To me, that's a lot. You compare that to somebody like Ford or GM, well, forget about it, right? They've got a lot more cars on the road, but Tesla is doing a great job. Now, there's some people who aren't very happy about Elon Musk and what he's been doing with Twitter, and that's kind of distracted from him. But Elon Musk sent out a tweet, and this is really kind of a bad, wrong place, wrong time sort of a tweet. This was just before Thanksgiving Day in 2022. He said, the Tesla full self-driving, did you get those words? Full self-driving beta is now available to anyone in North America who requests it from the car screen, assuming you have bought this option. Congratulations to Tesla Autopilot/AI team on achieving a major milestone. It's pretty cool. So he's saying, hey, if you paid the $15,000 upgrade for your car to get the full self-driving beta, all you have to do is go on the screen and hit a button and it will download. Of course, it takes a little while to download. You probably want to be at home on Wi-Fi, etc. when your car does that download. Well, what is kind of bad timing on that is that just a few hours later, there was an accident out in San Francisco's Yerba Buena Tunnel. And this particular accident involved a number of cars, 8 cars, injured 9 people, and it happened on Thanksgiving Day. That's not a good thing. Now, obviously, we've talked before and people have commented on the fact that when you are driving a car, you expect certain other drivers on the road to behave in a specific way. I get kind of frustrated when I'm sitting in the passenger seat and the driver of the car that I'm in doesn't do what is expected of them. So, if you've got traffic that's merging onto the highway and you're on the highway, you don't slow down for them an incredible amount. They are supposed to yield to you. So by you hitting the brake when someone's trying to come on and merge and they have the yield, and you are behaving in a way that's different, you are much more likely to cause an accident. Well, that's what has been happening with some of the autonomous cars over the years. They're driving along. They don't understand what's happening right now. So the default is, okay, we will push the brakes and come to a stop. You know, sometimes they'll pull over to the side of the road. We talked about those autonomous car that was, I think it was an Uber car. Anyways, it was being pulled over by the police because a light was out, and it pulled over, and the police came up and looked inside. There's no one inside, and then the car decided it was going to drive even further down the road. It was really kind of funny, kind of a slapstick routine there with the police. That's one thing. Nobody's injured. When there's an 8-car pileup and 9 people injured, including a little child, things start getting worrisome. Well, there's some video out there that was posted by The Intercept, and it shows the cars in that tunnel out in San Francisco. So they're all driving along. It's actually fairly light traffic considering San Francisco, and I have driven there before. And the cars are coming along in the tunnel. Everything's looking good. And then you see a white car, turn on its left signal light. Now, this car, white car, is in the lane to the right of the fast lane. So this road has 5 lanes in it. And of course, you got the slow lane on one side, and all the way over on the left-hand side is the fast lane. So this Tesla was in California, they number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with 5 being the fast lane. Some states do it the opposite way. So the Tesla was in lane number 4. It turns on its left signal and starts to move into the fast lane. While it's moving into the fast lane, in other words, it's still occupying lanes 4 and 5, it applies the brakes. I mean, it comes to a quick stop, like someone would, jam on the brakes. Now, looking at this video, I looked at it really closely to try and see, well, was there something in the road that the Tesla might have misinterpreted? Maybe there's some blowing trash, or maybe something had fallen off a vehicle in front of that Tesla. And I'm looking at the video, and I don't see anything in front of it. So here it is. It's pulling over. A black car smashes into it. Another SUV smashes into that. A truck smashes into it. A car goes up. It plows in, and its rear wheels are off the ground. A couple of other cars smash into it. And then, of course, being California, nobody bothers to pull over to help all these people in the accident until probably about 50 cars have passed, maybe 100 cars. Then finally, there's a good Samaritan. Hey, what do you know? So it is obviously the Tesla's fault, right? If you're rear-ended, it's typically just absolutely, totally, and completely considered your fault if you're rear-ended. So this was the Tesla's fault. So apparently, well, let me just say that differently. Reportedly, this Tesla was driving with its full self-driving feature turned on. Now, what does full self-driving mean to you? What does it mean to me? It probably, by default means the same thing, which is you get in the car, you push a button, well, you tell it where you want to go, you push a button, and ta-da, you are gone, right? Well, that's not apparently what Tesla thinks full self-driving is. Tesla says that you can engage this, but you still are in charge of the car. You still have to maintain your hands on the steering wheel. If something happens, you should drive, take over, right? And the Tesla is designed so that if you start playing around with the controls, it will give up and you can then start the driving. So, I think that all makes sense to me. But when you are using full self-driving, I think most people are thinking it's autonomous. In other words, the car is thinking and driving itself. So Tesla on its website, I looked it up, says that full self-driving currently enabled feature requires active driver supervision and do not make the vehicle autonomous. Some other manufacturers out there of autonomous vehicles, again, autonomous to different degrees, have come out and removed themselves that saying of full self-driving, because they aren't. They are not autonomous. No car out there that's on the road being tested right now is autonomous. They're all trying to get there, right? But none of them are, at least at this stage. Eventually, I think they will be. It's a problem. Now, Tesla, this is a misleading stat. Sorry about this one. But Tesla in vehicles were involved in almost 70% of the almost 400 crashes involving advanced driver assist systems reported over a 1-year period here last year out in California. And I say it's misleading because most of the autonomous vehicles, or at least self-driving vehicles, are Teslas out in California and worldwide, frankly. So, it's interesting to read these articles and see how they might be kind of misleading you. And this is from Inside EVs, which is a whole industry site about electric cars, electric vehicles. So interesting, isn't it, that poor old Elon tweeted saying, hey, full self-driving beta is now available to anyone. Just touch the screen. And it's reported that this guy was using full self-driving, and thankfully no one was killed in this particular accident that we're talking about here. I think it was a 2-year-old was injured, as well as 8 other people. But you can bet they are getting a serious look into. And on the other side, one of the major investors over at Tesla is complaining, has been very vocal on Twitter about Elon Musk and how he's been involved in Twitter and he's distracted. And Elon's saying, hey, listen, I haven't missed a single meeting over there at Tesla. And he has told people at Twitter that they cannot make any major changes without his personal approval. And that some of these major changes are going to have to wait because he is busy with Tesla. So that's kind of interesting, too. Absolutely interesting. A bunch of insults on Twitter, of course. And Elon Musk didn't shut him down or anybody else, to the best of my knowledge. So that's kind of cool, too. So one more thing here before we disappear. And this is Tom's Guide. And what Tom had to say. This is an opinion piece over on Tom's Guide. You might have seen it before. Pretty decent website. It has a lot of information. Much of it's actually quite good, quite accurate, particularly when he takes things apart and breaks them down. But Tom Pritchard said, I've driven more than 1,000 miles in Teslas, and I will never buy one. Okay, it's a very vogue brand. A lot of people like it, but he doesn't like it. He says his beef is with Tesla, not with electric cars as a whole. Hey, hopefully you got my insider show notes this week. A friend of mine is offering some free training for people who want to move up in their careers. So I sent out a couple emails on that as well. But sign up right now, craigpeterson.com/subscribe. Well, we got Ukraine in the news again this week, but in this case, it's a Ukrainian that has been running a crime as a service, and he has just been arrested. It'll be interesting to find out exactly why, and you'll find out right now. You might have heard of it, and you might have been caught in the middle of it because they stole 50 million people's unique credentials. Now, this was also, by the way, forms of identification. So email addresses, bank account numbers, cryptocurrency addresses, and credit card numbers. Of course, cryptocurrency account numbers. It goes on and on. So this guy was a young guy. He's in his 20s, and he decided he wanted to make a bunch of money. And as you know, there's a lot of criminals out there, and many of them aren't very bright. So if you are bright and you are a criminal, what might you do? There has been a whole industry that came about that is called crime as a service. Now, we've heard about all these as a service things. You go to Azure, you can get as a service these servers that you can use, or Windows accounts, or maybe you've got Microsoft 365. You can go to Amazon Web Services. Man, they've got a ton of services, far more than what Azure has. And it's really nice because you don't have to really do much or do anything in some cases. They just take care of it for you. So you might have a huge database. Amazon will take care of it for you. They'll run it, they'll upgrade it. They'll rely on you to make sure it's secure, lock it down, and that has been, frankly, the source of a whole lot of breaches over the years where people didn't really know what they were doing, didn't really lock it down, and that includes government agencies, and so it was stolen. As a service is a big deal. Have you heard of things like Salesforce.com, for instance? Salesforce.com is what we call software as a service. And there's a lot of it, right? So what other ones might you be using? While some others, I'm just looking at a list here. They're everywhere, really. This Lumen 5 thing, Future Fuel, which is a payment thing. There are a ton of customer relationship management programs, enterprise resource planning, ERP systems, content management systems. You can't name them all because there's so many of them. Well, we have just shut down as a service here for criminals. This guy put something together that has been dubbed the Raccoon Network. And of course, it's sitting over on the dark web. And they had developed a web-based control panel that you could use. So here's the idea. For $200 a month, you, as a criminal customer of his, could get the latest version of the Raccoon InfoStealer malware. So all you had to do now is get people to install the malware. So what might you do? Well, you might send out a text message and have someone click on a link and they install something they think they need. The list of those goes on and on, doesn't it? They might send out an email and get you to install it. They might have someone... You might have someone in your company that is a disgruntled employee, and they could go and download this malware and get it installed on a whole bunch of computers, or install it themselves, or let it spread within the network. And what they get then is they get this interaction ability with the infected systems in real time. So they can go to this web-based control crime as a service panel. They can, once they're there, start poking around on your machine, on other machines, uploading files, downloading files, maybe installing ransomware, which is pretty easy to do if you have complete remote control over a computer, which is why managed services providers are big targets and why so many of them are not only targeted, but actually hacked. One of the biggest info breaches that has ever occurred was because one of these providers, one of these service providers for managed services providers wasn't secure. So if they get a hold of you as a managed services provider, or my company, for instance, they now have access to all of my company's customers, right? It gets kind of convoluted pretty quickly. But the idea behind this is get this malware, install it on as many computers as you can, or get people to install it themselves, and then go to the control panel. I don't know if you've ever seen any of these. These web control panels are really quite cool. Well, the passwords and other data that was stolen by this Raccoon malware were also resold to groups that were engaged in deploying ransomware. So really, Raccoon was a remote control panel. That's what it was. So they've been trying to find this guy for a while. 50 million unique credentials stolen is quite a bit. And according to the U.S. Justice Department, the FBI has identified a lot of these stolen criminal materials because they caught this guy. So how did they catch them? And by the way, you'll see this in my newsletter that came out on Monday, or you might have gotten it Wednesday this week. It is really quite something. It's from Krebs on Security. They have a picture of this guy. Now, this is where it starts getting really, really interesting, because here's this guy fleeing Ukraine after the Russian invasion. Now, it's a guy. He's 26 years old, and he is leaving Ukraine. Well, guess why? Well, because there was mandatory military service in Ukraine for 26-year-old young men. He apparently didn't want to go and enlist or, be conscripted. So there is a picture of him here. His name's Mark Sokolovsky, driving what looks to me like a brand new, because it's got the new headlights, Porsche Cayenne. Porsche Cayenne. Now, those aren't really cheap cars. I don't know if you've ever seen them before. You can get them for a pretty good deal on the used market. People really want the new ones. But I had the chance to go have a quick look online. And a 2019 Porsche Cayenne S is the really nice one, good motor, is $64,000. That's a 4-year-old car. And then if you get the high-end one, which is the Turbo GT Coupe, brand new. Well, actually, this is certified pre-owned. I take that back. It's a 2022. Only $210,000. So I want you to picture for just a minute Ukraine. And the pictures you've seen of Ukraine, and just kind of ignoring all of the damage that's occurred because of the war. That is not a very wealthy country. And to see someone like this, who is driving, a 26-year-old driving a Porsche Cayenne, would, to me anyways, kind of raise some suspicion. So he managed to get out of Ukraine. And this is from, by the way, a indictment that was unsealed here a couple of weeks back from a U.S. attorney in the Western District of Texas. They're saying he was a core developer for the Raccoon InfoStealer business. It's marketed on several Russian-language cybercrime forums beginning of 2019. And many people that had been buying it and had subscribed complained a lot because all of a sudden they said, due to circumstances, we are no longer able to provide service. And I'm looking at the control panel right now, a screenshot of it. It's really quite nice. I think the guy did quite a good job. $200 a month, and you could make hundreds of thousands of dollars or something like this, right? So Texas, obviously the feds worked with investigators in Italy, the Netherlands. U.S. authorities seized a copy of the server used by Raccoon to help customers manage their botnets. And according to the U.S. Justice Department, they have identified who it was. So he's fled Ukraine. So what did they do? How did they find him? Very, very good questions, right? Well, apparently he made what technically is an operational security mistake. And some of his early posts in the crime forums connected a Gmail account for a cybercrime forum identity that he used called Photix to an Apple iCloud account belonging to him. And that Apple iCloud account, like most of these accounts, if they receive a subpoena, will spill all of the pictures, all of the other stuff that they have. Apple didn't used to be that way, but they have been for a while now if they get a subpoena from a court. So one of these pictures shows him holding 6 big stacks of cash. Okay. So they had him. They kind of knew where he was. They knew he was living in Kharkiv over there in Ukraine. And they got information from the Polish border guards that he had left. I know I can pronounce that word. And it was a bit of a problem because all able-bodied men of military age were required to report to service to help repel the Russian invasion, or special operation, I should say. And it would have been illegal for him to leave Ukraine without permission, but that wasn't the Polish guards' job, right? The Poles aren't going to enforce Ukrainian law. When we get back, this story gets very, very interesting of how he was tracked down, how he was found. And I'll give you a site you can go to find out if your information was stolen by this kid and what you can do about it. Make sure you visit me online, CraigPeterson.com, and look up this story on my newsletter this week. Well, they've shut down another big crime as a service ring, and this particular one was focused around this 26-year-old Ukrainian guy. We're going to talk about how he got caught. Interesting story, and I'll tell you how to see if you were caught in his web. We have this 26-year-old guy fleeing Ukraine. You've seen the pictures of Ukraine. You know a guy, 26 years old, driving a Porsche Cayenne in Ukraine must be corrupt somehow, right? The most corrupt country in Europe, according to many people's evaluation. So he's leaving. He crosses the Polish border. The guards there let him through, but they have a picture of him and someone, who knows who, in the passenger seat. So they were bribed by this kid to let them pass, and so they did. So the authorities tracked his phone through Germany and then to the Netherlands. Now, here's part of the way that they found him. His girlfriend, who was quite cute, I see a picture of them kind of making out here in a square in the Netherlands, and she was taking pictures of them, selfies and others on their trip, kind of the whole way, and posting them to her Instagram account. Isn't that something? So this is Amsterdam's Dam Square is where it's at. I don't know how they pronounce that, Dam or whatever it is. So they knew where they were. They had all of these pictures of the places they were staying. And of course, even if you remove the geolocation codes that are on those pictures, people know some of these areas. And this one was pretty obvious. You can see in the background exactly where they were. So they arrested this kid. This was on March 20th. They arrested him. 2 days later, 2 days after, I should say, the Poles let him pass. So they are moving around pretty good. So on the 25th of March, after he was arrested 5 days later, the accounts that had previously advertised the Raccoon Stealer malware on these cybercrime forums announced that the service was closing down. And the parting message to their customers said nothing about an arrest and insinuated that the core members in charge of the Malware as a Service project had perished in the Russian invasion. Yeah, the Ukrainians, they left. And the town that he left from was one of the first towns in that invasion. Unfortunately, due to special operation, we have to close our Raccoon Stealer project. Okay, so now he is in the hands of these Dutch authorities, and the U.S. applied for him to be extradited, and it has been granted. But he's appealing the decision. He faces 1 count of conspiracy to commit computer fraud, 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering, and 1 count of aggravated identity theft. Remember, 50 million people's unique records here, right? So sources told Krebs on Security that he'd been consulting with a Houston, Texas-based attorney, F. and Dino Reno. Now, if you're kind of wondering, where have I heard that name before? He's the attorney that represented Alex Jones in that recent defamation lawsuit. What was the award on that? I think it was like $1 billion. It's got to be one of the biggest awards ever. And Alex Jones is the InfoWars guy. He has his website. He's got all kinds of theories about things, including, in this case, talking about these kids that were murdered in a school and saying it was all faked, right? And so that's how he lost that case. And $1 billion is, good luck collecting on that one. But this attorney was responsible for what Jones himself referred to as the Perry Mason moment of the trial, where the plaintiff's lawyer revealed that Raynal had inadvertently given them an entire digital copy of Jones's cell phone. And Mr. Raynal didn't respond to requests for comments here for Krebs. If convicted, Sokolovsky faces a maximum penalty of 20 years in prison for the wire fraud and money laundering offenses, 5 years for the conspiracy to commit computer fraud charge, and a mandatory consecutive 2-year term for the aggravated identity theft offense. So, how do you know if your information was stolen in this? Now, it's important to know if your information was stolen and why, what you can do about it and why it was stolen. So let's talk for a minute here about some of the values. And again, I'm going to refer to it's really kind of cool here, mind map that Krebs had put together, because I think he's got a whole bunch of great stuff. So your PC being hacked is valuable. And also, if you are a business, you're even more valuable, typically because you have more bandwidth and higher powered computers. So they could set up a web server on your hacked PC. There could be a phishing site, could be a malware download site, could be a piracy server, child porn server. I served as a witness here for a guy down in New Jersey who had been sharing files online with one of these torrent sites, and he had been accused by the FBI of having child porn on his computer. Well, if your computer is hacked and they're using it to distribute child porn, should you go to jail over that? Now, he went to jail because he was charged and they arrested him, and he did get out. He was kind of a stalwart in the community, which is why I worked with him. But your hacked computer can be used to distribute child porn. We've also found computers that were hacked that distributed pictures from Al-Qaeda of beheading of Americans and other atrocities, okay? You don't want your computer to get hacked. You can also, they can use your computer for email attacks, webmail spam. They can send out stranded abroad advanced scams. And I had an employee that had that happen, where they got this scam email. Actually, I think for her it was a text saying, "Hey, I'm stuck abroad and I need to make bail. You need to send me money right away." And so my employee thought, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm just going to give her a call." Gave her a call, and she was fine. She wasn't overseas at all. And she was kind of chuckling about, "Wow, that's weird, because that ain't me." So access to corporate emails, another thing, harvesting accounts, email contacts, virtual goods could be sold through your site, right? The dark web can run on your computer in your business or in your home. They can put it on there. It's easy enough to do. Just put it on the Onion Network. Bot activity. It goes on, right? And maybe we should focus in on that at some point. And then your email account, again, it's worth a lot of money. Privacy, all of your messages, calendar, chats, photos, call records. You can use it for retail resale. Things like Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Macy's, Amazon. Think of all of the stores you've bought from. Financial, your bank accounts are on there. This goes on and on. So he had a very valuable company, and your information may well have been stolen. So what I want you to do is get a pencil out, because I'm going to give you a website that you can go to, or get ready to type this into your computer. And what you do when you get there, this is run by the U.S. Justice Department. And when you get there, it's going to ask for your email address. Now, I sent this out as well in my email this week, so you should have received it. There's a direct link to this site. But you put in your email address, and it will tell you if you were part of the Raccoon InfoStealer data. It's raccoon.ic3.gov. Raccoon.ic3.gov. And if you're a victim of any sort of cybercrime, go to ic3.gov and report it. They might not do anything specifically for you, but it does help them track it down. Raccoon.ic3.gov. This ruling is going to affect every business in the country. It doesn't matter how small they are or how big they are. This is absolutely huge, and I'm going to explain it to you right now. Cybersecurity is really important. You know, I talk about it all of the time. I have my website, craigpeterson.com, that has a ton of information on it. And this is what I do for my clients, for business and government agencies all across the world for decades now. I hate to admit that in some ways, but I'm proud of it too, because I know what I'm talking about, because I've had so much experience. Well, this is a story about a ruling. It's in the New York Times. Yes, indeed. They sometimes do accidental journalism. And it's a fascinating story for every person in business. Now, I'm talking about business owners, but I'm also talking about just employees, because this could put your business out of business in a very, very big way. And this is a story about Joe Sullivan. He was a security chief over at a company called Uber. And of course, you probably know Uber is one of these ride-sharing type companies. But he was found guilty early October by a jury in federal court on charges that he did not disclose a breach of customer and driver records to government regulators. I talked about this years ago when we first found out about the breach. So you might remember this, might ring a bell to you. But in 2016, the Federal Trade Commission was investigating Uber over an earlier breach of its online systems. And Mr. Sullivan, the security guy at Uber, learned of a new breach that affected the accounts of more than 57 million people. Now, the jury found him guilty on one count of obstructing the FTC's investigation and one count of misprision, I guess is how you might pronounce that, or acting to conceal a felon from authorities. So this is believed to be the first time a company executive faced criminal prosecution over a hack. And it really could change how security professionals are handling data breaches. It's really interesting to consider this, frankly. So here's a quote from some security and law professors and lecturers at a few different law schools, but saying the way responsibilities are divided up is going to be impacted by this. What's documented is going to be impacted by this. The way bug bounty programs are designed is going to be impacted by this. Now, that last part is where Sullivan really got himself in trouble, and that's bug bounties. I don't know if you've heard of these before, but the idea is every computer has a bug. That's always been true. It will always be true. Some of the bugs are pretty bad, and some of them aren't so bad. That's why you have to patch. Now, of course, just turning on auto updates on your Mac or auto updates on your Windows computer does not patch everything that needs to be patched, but that's a different story for another day. So the way bug bounty programs are set up is they want to encourage what are called white hat hackers to tell them about bugs that they find. So if you've got somebody that knows about a bug and they come to you and say, hey, here's a bug. It's going to allow people to take over your any Mac, any iOS, any Android, any Windows, whatever it might be, or maybe even just a specific piece of software. And what's it worth to you to find out about it? So in other words, in the bug bounty programs, people get paid for finding the bugs and reporting the bugs. Now, they actually don't even have to find it. They just have to report it, right? It might be somebody else who found it. And they get paid once they reveal what the bug is. It's kind of an interesting dance, because what could happen is they say, well, I got this bug and it's going to end the world tomorrow. And the company they reported to is going to say, yeah, sure, show it to me. So then the guy has to show them the bug and how easy it is to do, whether it can be exploited out in the wild easily by people, and whether it's a remote execution bug, right? All of these different things that have to be considered. And then the company will decide how much they're going to pay. In this case, apparently what had happened, what happened, because the jury decided this, right? But they found that a hacker and an accomplice had downloaded the personal data of about 600,000 Uber drivers and additional personal information about 57 million riders and drivers, I should say. So that's according to the court testimony and documents. So the hackers wanted to get paid. So this was a ransom, right? This was the second form of ransomware, if you will, that we see today, where the first form was, I'm going to encrypt all your files, pay me to be able to decrypt them. And the second form was, I'm going to suck all the files off of your computers. Then I'm going to encrypt them and hold them ransom. And if you don't pay me to decrypt them, I'm going to release them and embarrass the company, embarrass you, whatever might end up happening, right? The consequences. So it's kind of a double whammy. In this case, the hackers said, hey, pay us at least $100,000 or we're going to release all of this information. Interesting. So now Uber's faced with the question, at that point in time, do we comply? What do we do here about all of this? And so the security guy decided, okay, well, maybe we can use the bug bounty program. We can claim that, these guys discovered a bug in our systems, so we have money set aside for bug bounties, and we'll just pay them from that. But the bug bounty program capped payouts at $10,000, according to the court testimony documents. But Mr. Sullivan and his team paid the hackers $100,000, and the CEO apparently was in on it as well. Now, that's kind of interesting too, isn't it? They had the hackers sign a non-disclosure agreement. And the hackers admitted under testimony they were trying to extort money from Uber. And here's the second problem. Uber did not publicly disclose the incident or inform the FTC until the new chief executive joined the company in 2017. The two hackers pled guilty to the hack back in October 2019. Now, most states require companies to disclose breaches if hackers download personal data. And there's usually a ceiling or a floor, if you will, that there a certain number of users are affected or certain type of information is revealed, right? There's no federal law that's requiring companies or executives to reveal the breaches to the regulators, but there are state laws. Pretty much every state now has a law. Some of them are tougher than others, but the Northeast, all of the states definitely have these laws. California, the states you kind of expect to have them. And the federal prosecutors argued that Mr. Sullivan knew that revealing the new hack would extend the FTC investigation and hurt his reputation, and that he concealed the hack from the FTC. So this does not have to be a public company. You don't have to be a public company to have these laws affect you. If you are hacked, you need to report it. right? You are mandated to report it to the state. Personally, I would report it to the feds. I would use the ic3.gov website, and I would probably call up the FBI if that's what my client wanted to do. Hey, make sure you go online, sign up for my newsletter, get this and everything else I talk about on the air, CraigPeterson.com. We got a couple of good articles here we'll discuss from We Live Security. The first one is about Airbnb and spy cameras that might be in that room and hacking baby monitors. It's a big deal. You'll find in this week's newsletter a couple of articles with links over to welivesecurity.com. And the reason those are both there is because it has to do with the bad guys spying on you the old-fashioned way with cameras and microphones. Yeah, interesting, because it's still happening. First of all here, we're going to talk about Airbnb. So in recent years, we've had some travelers who have reported that they were being filmed by covert cameras in rental properties. Now, this isn't just Airbnb. There are others out there. And for those that aren't familiar with it, Airbnb is a website that you can go and you can rent out your house or your condo or your apartment to strangers, perfect strangers. And then they can rent them. And I've used Airbnb a few times, and I've been very disappointed with it more than once, which is kind of a shame, frankly. But anyways, if you have one of these properties that you want to rent out, you want to make sure that it's reasonably secure. Airbnb has gone so far as to disallow using one of the rental properties for having a party. Why? Well, because some of these properties have been destroyed by partiers. So what are you to do? Well, security cameras and noise monitoring devices are allowed by Airbnb. Quote, as long as they're clearly disclosed in the listing description and don't infringe on another person's privacy. So there, it's pretty obvious that you probably don't want to be doing something that you shouldn't be doing, or maybe you don't want filmed in one of the more public areas. So I'm thinking that's like the living room, the kitchen, outside the property, right? And outside the property, okay, I expect there to be security cameras. I have security cameras everywhere around my house. But how about inside? And that's where people have had their dream vacations ruined because they found this creepy little camera. You might be familiar with some of them. They've certainly been in movies and TV shows. Things like your bear, a teddy bear sitting on a shelf. That eye might be a camera. You can buy a smoke detector that has a camera built right in. Those sorts of things aren't just from spy movies anymore, right? It isn't what the Soviets did and we did back to them. This is something anybody can go online and buy. And that's a bit of a problem. So if I go right now, so I'm going to go and look for babysitter camera, hidden camera, with audio. Right here on Amazon.com. And guess what I have? A whole bunch of them. Oh, 2K. That's pretty fancy. Two-way audio. This is the sort of thing you might use for a baby monitor. Here's some other ones. Here's one built right into a clock. 1080p. So that's HD. That's high def video there for $69.99. Here it is. I mentioned this to you. A hidden camera smoke detector. Wi-Fi spy camera. Hidden cameras. Security nanny cams. Not very good ratings on that one. And then Amazon even has a whole list of highly rated. It goes on and on. Here's a cute little one. It looks like a little robot, but it doesn't move apparently. Security cone. Oh, here's one. I haven't seen this before. This is a USB power plug, that you plug in and then to the wall, and then you plug your USB power into it. And built right into it is a spy camera. They even called it a spy camera. Here's another one. I've never seen that type before. Here's a really small one, a DIY module. Okay, it goes on and on. I'm not going to bore you with these all. I think they're actually pretty cool, frankly. Here's one built into a pen. One that's smaller than your fingernail. Wow. 13 pages worth of them over on Amazon. So they are definitely available. But what do you do? Because it can be really hard to spot these things. And they're designed to be hard to spot. It's intended that they're hard to spot. Well, here you go. It was in this week's newsletter. Hopefully you got that. You can sign up at craigpeterson.com. You'll get all of this stuff, right? I'm not pounding you with marketing messages like some other people who are marketers, primarily marketers. I'm primarily a security guy. And my wife says we should be selling a bunch of stuff, but, what am I going to do? I have some things, but I deal with businesses for the most part. So here's what you can do. Go to either the website that this article appears on. Of course, it doesn't have my commentary, but welivesecurity.com. They got a bunch of good stuff. But here's the list that they have. Physically check the room. So you want to look for cameras that are hiding in plain sight. They might be in the clocks, like I mentioned. They might be in smoke detectors, like I mentioned. They could be in speakers or even in light bulbs. Use a flashlight. Now, this is a very good trick. And I kind of learned this one with my wife because she had a really bad retina tear and had surgery to repair it, and she got almost 100% back of her sight. It was amazing, particularly considering it was a tear and not just a detachment. Anyhow, she ended up having to have her lens replaced in her eye. So they replaced it with a glass lens. And so now in certain light conditions, it looks like she has cat's eyes or dogs, right? Where they reflect back at you. Deer, right? These illegal hunters go out in spotlight to find deer at night along the side of the road. Completely illegal. But I can do it to find my wife, just spotlight, and there she is. But these camera lenses are also made of glass, just like her eye has glass in it right there for her lens. That means they are reflective. So turn off the lights in your Airbnb or even your hotel room, whatever you're renting, and shine a flashlight around. Particularly shine it at things that are interesting, like we had mentioned, right? The fire detector, the things plugged into the wall, teddy bears, all of these different types of security devices or devices that might have security in them. And if you see it shine back at you, kind of like your pet's eyes at night, then you need to take a closer look at it. If it is in a private area, so in other words, if it's in a bathroom or in a bedroom that should be obviously private, or you find it anywhere in the property and it was not clearly disclosed in the rental site, Uber or wherever you got it from, it has to be clearly disclosed, then you need to do two things. One, report it to the rental company. Let them know what you found. They might want you to send some pictures. And number two, if you are particularly upset, call the police, because that's illegal. People get arrested for this sort of thing all of the time. And there's no reason that you should have to put up with it. Okay, so there's a few things you can do, but those are probably your best. Also, if the lights are out or down and you notice a red light or perhaps a green light, these may well be infrared lights, ultraviolet lights that are trying to light up the area. Now, you might not see them very brightly, but you will see them. And that could be a telltale sign right there. So there's some pretty fancy mobile applications are being developed. You can look for those. Time of flight is one of them, these sensors to find spy cams. You can also potentially detect RF signals. You could do a scan of the Wi-Fi network to see what other devices are on that network. That's usually a pretty easy thing to do. Those apps are free for your smartphones and for your laptops. Just scan the network and see what is attached to the network. That might tell you something right there. So that's what I would do. First of all, I just do that scan, right? You can also, if you're really trying to be thorough, I have an advanced class ham radio license, so I've got frequency detectors and frequency counters and things, so I can check and find out what's where. But just scanning Wi-Fi is probably good enough, and using the flashlight. Now, baby monitors. Another article from WeLiveSecurity.com. Where parents are opening the door to the baby's bedroom because they hear something coming from there, and they find a stranger talking to their baby through the monitor. Now, in both these cases, where we're talking about the rental property or we're talking about baby monitors, it's actually fairly rare that either one of these things happens. So I don't want you to totally freak out. But they can happen, and there's things you can do. I told you what to do here about the spy cameras. Here's what you do about the baby monitors. First of all, make sure you research it thoroughly. You want to use a manufacturer that places a strong emphasis on security, and obviously one that has really good reviews. Okay, makes sense? Make sure once you get it that you update the device's firmware. That's important. So when you're buying it, make sure that the firmware can be updated. Does that make sense? And also make sure you're using strong and unique passwords, usernames, two-factor authentication if you can, and use also don't use a service that requires you to mess around with your firewall. It's called port forwarding or UPnP, because that alone is extremely dangerous and can give someone on the outside direct access to your baby monitor or your security cameras. Hey, make sure you sign up. CraigPeterson.com. You'll get my weekly newsletter, the free one, with all kinds of great insider show notes.